Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. Looks like we have a handful of people here. Hello, Drew Harrison, and thanks for calling me one of the lovelies if I am. I appreciate you all showing up. This is going to be kind of interesting. Last time I streamed, I talked about the Star Wars prequels, which obviously is going to get a few people showing up and curious. This time, I'm going to read something that a lot of people probably thought was too boring for school. So we'll see how this goes. I got a hair sticking out here. It's driving me up the wall. I'll try to fix that. So a little context. I'm kind of excited to do this. I think it'll be fun, even though it's a little different. I'm sure that most people here are up for something nerdy. Sorry, I'm playing with my hair so much. It's a little long on the sides and the glasses mess it up, but whatever. We'll deal with that. I was a little on the fence about what I was going to do for tonight, as evidenced by the fact that I did a poll asking whether you'd rather see me do this or just play a random video game and answer questions. I was really surprised that the majority of people asked for this. So here we are. Hello, Scuzzbopper, and hello, Topher. So my next video I'm working on for my main channel is actually book one of the Iliad. So this might seem a little bit redundant, but that one is more of a polished scripted thing where I'm summarizing the book and just giving some commentary on it. This one, I just thought it'd be fun to sit around and low-key read and chat with you guys while I do that. And of course, I'll just talk about it too. This is something I've done a bit. I used to be an English teacher, and my little niche was classical literature, or classical mythology, sorry. So I would teach other things, but every semester I got assigned classical mythology, and it became my favorite class to teach. And I wasn't a very popular teacher in general, I wouldn't say, mostly because I was new, and no new teachers are ever good. But kids started to like this one, and I noticed I would have teacher's aides in this class every period. And one of them told me that they would actually take the class. They were my teacher's aide because they just wanted to listen to the class again. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I hope you all enjoy this. I got a couple comments I want to address. Somebody asked, what game would I be playing? I'm not 100% sure. I had a couple ideas. I thought of doing Hades. I'm not much of a gamer, but my kids got me into Hades, and I actually have beaten it a few times. I got to roll credits, and I've beaten Hades a few more times after that. It's a pretty fun game, and I enjoy it. It's probably one of the best, most accurate and extensive pop culture treatments of Greek mythology, I think. It's obviously not perfect, but it has a lot. It has a better perspective on the gods and how they behave and what their attributes are than certainly most Greek mythology movies. Hello, anonymous insignificant person. That's not what I think you are. I'm just using your name that you gave me. So let's dive into this, I guess. Before I actually start reading the text, somebody asked me which translation I'm using, and they asked that I use Robert Fagel's translation. I am actually using, let me share it here, one by a guy called Ian Johnston, which some of you may have heard of, a lot of you might not have. If you ever want to read the Iliad, and I'm not so sure a ton of people do, but if you do, I would suggest this one. Going to see seeing which of these screens works best. That's too small. That should work, I guess. Or how about this one? But this Ian Johnston, the guy who wrote this, he has this entire thing free online, and he did it just, I guess, because he loves Greek mythology. Let me go back to his main page. He has a lot of stuff. He has a lot of different translations of things. So various different Greek playwrights and other other writings that he's translated. So pretty cool stuff. So that's just a little suggestion, and he lets you use this for free basically any way you want. I think if you he just wants you to let him know if you use it for anything commercial or anything like that. So that's what that is. So Iliad is, as you can see here, this is 24 books. They call them books instead of chapters. And it's most often known as the story of the Trojan War, but it's not exactly that. And if you're here, I'm sorry if I'm over explaining. I just want to cover some of the basics before we get into it. If you showed up to watch something about the Iliad, you probably know most of this stuff. Let me know in the chat whether I'm over or under explaining or anything like that. But this is the story of the last year. I believe we're 9 years into the war at this point. And so this is just a cross section of the story meant to tell the story of Achilles, or part of Achilles' stories, like a specific conflict he got into. So we're going to look at book 1 here, A Quarrel by the Ships. And in this one, again, most of you who bothered to come here probably know this. This starts in media res, which means in the middle of things. So we're starting right in the middle of the action. And so if you've never read a Greek epic, it starts with what's called an invocation to the muse. So that's just where you ask the goddesses, or the goddess of inspiration, the muse, to help you tell your story, I suppose. This is one thing I like about Ian Johnston's work. Besides, I'm a huge fan just because I think it's really cool that he did all this for free just for the public good. But I think this is a really easy to read translation, and where a lot of them also translate into prose, so they make it into big blocky paragraphs. This one is actually written in poetic structure anyway, and I think it's mostly meant to, well, it doesn't follow exactly the Greek lines, but you're going to see numbers here. The regular numbers are the number of lines in English, and then they have the accompanying Greek lines here, and I don't know why they're broken down differently, probably just because of how you have to lay out the structure of the sentences in English. But I find this just very easily readable. I don't know if it's probably the most poetic or artful, but it's just super easy to digest. And the Iliad needs a lot of help in that regard if you're not familiar with it. It's not an easy read by modern standards. Word for word, each sentence of this translation is very easy to read, but the way they tell the story can be a little off-putting to modern audiences and doesn't fit most of our expectations of a story. And I'll get into that as we go through it. But going back to the beginning of this guy, by the way, he has his general information up here, and then he has the title, and after that, a summary, which kind of helps. The Iliad, if you ever want to read it, there are parts of it that can be interesting to read just to get a flavor of the story. Other parts are just basically unbearable due to boredom. Book 1 is generally a pretty easy read for those who are into this kind of thing. So he starts, sing goddess, sing the rage of Achilles, son of Peleus, that murderous anger which condemned Achaeans to countless agonies and threw many warrior souls deep into Hades, leaving their dead bodies carry on food for dogs and birds, all in fulfillment of the will of Zeus. So the goddess is the muse. So when they talk about the invocation of the muse, that's what he's saying when he says sing goddess. A lot of translations I'd seen before actually said sing muse. I've seen it more translated goddess since then. I've never seen muse since. I don't know if it was just something in a specific textbook in college. They probably use the word goddess because people see muse as more of a figurative thing just for your personal sense of inspiration. But this serves both as a kind of a ritual invocation, basically calling on the goddesses of inspiration to help you. So I think it's a little bit supposed to be an act of humility and kind of a ritual, but it's also, it also serves as kind of a thesis statement. So he's singing about the rage of Achilles and basically the fact that his anger led to a lot of people's deaths. Start at the point where Agamemnon, son of Atreus, that king of men, quarreled with noble Achilles. Which of the gods incited these two men to fight? So again, this is starting to break down where the story's at right now. That god was Apollo, son of Zeus and Leto. Angry with Agamemnon, he cast plague down onto the troops, a deadly infectious evil. For Agamemnon had dishonored the god's priest, Chryses, who had come to the ships to find his daughter, Chryseis, bringing with him a huge ransom. In his hand, he held up on golden staff, the scarf sacred to archer god Apollo. He begged Achaeans above all the army's leaders. Menelaus, Agamemnon, sons of Atreus, all you well-armed Achaeans, may the gods on Olympus grant you wipe out Priam's city, and then return home safe and sound. Release my dear child to me. Take this ransom. Honor Apollo, far-shooting son of Zeus. So I see this as kind of opening up the story in layers, kind of peeling it back. It says that we're going to sing about the rage of Achilles, or the story is going to be about the rage of Achilles and all the devastation that follows. It gives us our starting point where Agamemnon started a fight with him. It asks who started these men to fight. So it's kind of just like giving us one little crumb after another, and says that's Apollo, and then says what Apollo did, which is that he sent a plague onto the Achaean army. The Achaeans, by the way, if you're not familiar with this, think of them essentially as the Greeks. All of these people would be culturally Greeks, the Greeks and the Trojans. But the Achaeans were like the mainland Greeks who they're in the area that we would call Greece today. Troy was in what we now see as Turkey on the coast. I think everybody here probably knows this stuff, but if not, hopefully I'm helping you along. And by the way, the whole opening, I'm not going to do a huge introduction to this, but essentially, if you lived in a cave all your life and don't know this, the Paris, he's a prince from Troy. Helen of Troy she wasn't Helen of Troy at the time. Helen was married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta, and Paris came over and basically snuck her away. Legends vary whether he kidnapped her or whether she went away willingly. Those two aren't really distinct in the ancient world where women don't have a lot of agency. And this set off a war. The reason this set off a war is because all the Greeks had an alliance to defend the honor of her marriage. The reason for that was she was the most beautiful person in all of Greece. Everybody in Greece wanted to marry her, and her father was afraid that if he married her to any one man, and everybody else would be upset. And so, long story short, everybody, in order to help him be confident in making his decision, decided that they all swore an oath saying all the kings of Greece would defend the honor of that marriage. And so that made him feel comfortable that he could give his daughter away and nobody would try to retaliate. And when I say all the kings of Greece, there are many different kings because they're all individual city-states, more or less. I don't know precisely how that works, but Greece is just a ton of tiny little kingdoms, basically, I think, the size of cities in the outlying areas. We might picture this as being like classical or Hellenic Greece, but this is like a generation before. This is looked at from a mythical perspective from the people we would consider the classical Greeks. So it's a little hard to pinpoint what the culture was like at this time. And a lot of their warfare was a combination of something before what we think of as a Greek phalanx and something that's just like totally stylized and impractical. And it's probably the ancient Greek people's idea of of action movie violence, I guess. Welcome, Mephisto. I am not wearing any pants. Well, good for you. I am, just it so turns out. Drew Harrison, sometime you should cover the golden apple of discord from the Principia Discordia. Paris is in it. Cool. I will have to look that up. Now, I have to acknowledge, and this comes from a lot of experience teaching Greek mythology in class, you can study up and know your stuff pretty well, but there's always going to be a Greek mythology nerd in the crowd who knows more than you, or at least knows different things than you. And the thing with Greek mythology is it varies a ton. So there's no one core set of facts about Greek myths. There are a lot of different traditions, and they tend to contradict each other. The whole question over how Helen went with how Helen went with Paris is just one of them. So anyway, I'm trying to cut this really short, but because that oath was in place, everybody had sworn that they would protect that sanctity of that marriage. As soon as Paris ran off with Helen, and there's a whole thing with the apple and the goddesses tempting him and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into all that. Look it up if you want. that activated an alliance of all the Achaean, I was going to say Greek, but all the Achaean city states. So basically, the mainland Greek states all took their 1,000 ships, according to at least some traditions or at least one poem, and sailed over to Troy to get Helen back. And so this starts, like I said, it starts in media res, in the middle of things, 9 years into the war, and also 9 days into this plague. So this plague's been going on for 9 days. I don't know if there's anything that's supposed to be symbolic in the fact that it's 9 out of 10 in either case, but it is what it is. So let me, gather my train of thought here. Oh yeah. So not, yeah, 9 days into the war, they had, they're having this plague because Agamemnon had some girl and her father. Well, her father's trying to come back and get her. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Christ is this priest. He's a priest of Apollo. He's coming back trying to get his daughter back. And basically the Achaeans had captured her in a raid on a town, and that's how they have her. And now her father's trying to ransom her back from them. The Achaeans roared out the support, respect the priest, take the generous ransom. Displeased, Agamemnon dismissed Chryses roughly. Old man, don't let me catch you by our hollow ships, sneaking back here today or later on. Who cares about Apollo's scarf and staff? I'll not release the girl to you. No, not before she's grown old with me in Argos, far from home. Argos is his home city or kingdom. Working in the loom, sharing my bed. Go away. If you want to get home safely, don't anger me. So basically, Agamemnon sucks. This guy came back for his daughter, and he just chased him away. The old man, afraid, obeyed and walked off in silence along the shore by the tumbling, crashing surf. By the way, Topher says, I used to hate Greek mythology, but I had to study both the Iliad and the Odyssey in middle school, in high school, and again in college. Unfortunately, I forgot half of it every time. Fun to listen. Well, thank you. Yeah, the Iliad is challenging to get all the way through. There are sections that are really good. I had my mentor teacher when I was first teaching. She said nobody's read through the entire Iliad. She thought this wasn't a good idea, but I just taught sections of it. I walked people through parts and then gave them sections to read, and they took to it pretty well. It's a really good story. You just have to know how to approach it, really. But Agamemnon just chases this old guy off. Kind of typical Greek mythology stuff, right? An old man comes by, the heroes don't respect him, and he's really mean. And you can probably guess what happens, I guess, partly because they tell you. Some distance off, he prayed to Lord Apollo, Leto's fair-haired child. God with a silver bow, protector of Chryses, sacred Scylla, mighty Lord of Tenedos, Smithian Apollo, hear my prayer. If I've ever pleased you with a holy shrine or burned bones for you, bulls and goats wrapped in fat, grant me my prayer. Force the Danaans to pay full price for my tears with your arrows. Oh, we got a couple more people here. Fletcher from the Deep, welcome. I had to read this in the one humanities class I took in college. And Janky Puzzle says, sweet. Well, thank you guys. And Danaans, I believe, is another name for the Achaeans. It might be a specific group of them, but as far as I know, those names are used interchangeably. I am not a scholar of classical works. This is just from my awareness of teaching it, getting my 4-year degree in teaching. So, like I've already told people, some people might know more about this than me, or at least certain parts of it. Also, if I pronounce things wrong, the funny thing about working with ancient texts like this is you could read it over and over and over again and be pronouncing it wrong your whole life and never realize it, or only be around people who pronounce it wrong. Also, these names have all come down from, they started Greek, became Latinized, and then are now rendered into English. So who knows if there's a right translation as we use it anyway, or sorry, right pronunciation. So this guy prays. I love that line, pay full price for my tears with your arrows. So Chryses prayed. Phoebus Apollo heard him. He came down from Olympus top enraged, carrying on his shoulders bow and covered quiver, his arrows rattling in anger against his arm. So the god swooped down, descending like the night. He sat some distance from the ship, shot off an arrow, the silver bow reverberating ominously. First, the god massacred mules and swift-running dogs, then loosed sharp arrows in among the troops themselves. Thick fires burned the corpses ceaselessly. For 9 days, Apollo rained death down upon the troops. On the 10th, Achilles summoned an assembly. White-armed Hera put the thought into his mind, concerned with the Danaans seeing them die. So this is basically leading us up to our initiating conflict. At this point, Agamemnon kicked a priest off. He prayed to Apollo, and Apollo started shooting arrows into the camp, and those arrows manifest as disease. Sorry, I'm pretty sure that as far as the Achaeans saw, they just were suffering from a plague. They weren't literally seeing arrows come in, and the arrows are like a personification of that. Or maybe if you wanted to look at this naturalistically, you could read this as an army of people in ancient times suffering from a plague, and that's just how they viewed it. You know, when you see things as you see a conscious intent behind things and attribute them to the gods. But anyway, Achilles wants to do something about this, and he brings an assembly together. So he gathers the army. And Hera, she's the wife of Zeus, of course. She's in favor of the Achaeans, and she inspired him to do this. Most of the time, the gods act very abstractly, and this is one of the ways they do it is by motivating people to do something. The men gathered. The meeting came to order. Swift-footed Achilles rose to speak. Sorry. Now you'll notice they use a lot of adjectives. So swift-footed Achilles. I can't remember what these are called. Remind me in the chat if somebody knows. Maybe they're sorry, there's a word for a formula adjective you always put in front of somebody, and I think it's usually derogatory, but I can't think of what we think of it as derogatory today, but there it's just a word for that usually accompanies somebody's name. But this is one of many formulas used in the Iliad and in well, I guess a lot of these old epic poems. The reason for this is, by the way, this wasn't originally put down into writing. These would have been epithet. Thank you, Alex. I believe that's what it is, epithet. But these were originally performed by traveling bards who would sing them, and that's why there are a lot of formulaic phrases and a lot of repetition in them. It helps the person remember what they're saying to their audience. It helps the audience to hear it reinforced. And if you think of it as a song, songs often have verses that they revert back to or common things that they repeat. And so it sounds silly if you're reading it like us, where you're just expecting to have it progress as a novel. But when you think of the original format and what they're doing, it makes a little bit more sense. He says, son of Atreus, speaking to Agamemnon, I fear we're being beaten back, forced home, if we aren't all going to be destroyed right here with war and plague killing off Achaeans. Come now, let's ask some prophet, priest, interpreter of dreams, for dreams too come from Zeus. A man who might say why Apollo is angry, whether he faults our prayers or offerings, whether somehow he'll welcome sacrificial smoke from perfect lambs and goats, then rouse himself and release us from this plague. Achilles spoke and took his seat. Then Calchas, Thestor's son, stood up before them all, the most astute interpreter of birds who understood present, future, and past. So interpreter of birds, I think one thing they would do is they would look for signs of birds. I think how they fly past and different things like that. It's probably people who did that in real life were just full of shit, but you would claim to see a bird do something and you'd think that it meant it was a sign from the god or an omen or something. His skill in prophecy, Apollo's gift, had led the Achaean ships to Troy. He addressed the troops, thinking of their common good. Interesting little twist there, too. It probably says something about how systematic their navigation was, that a prophet helps them get somewhere. But Achilles, friend of Zeus, you ask me to explain Apollo's anger, the god who shoots from far, and I will speak. But first you listen to me. Swear an oath that you will freely help me in word and deed. I think I may provoke someone who wields great power over Argives, another name for, I believe, the Achaeans, a man who is obeyed by everyone. An angry king overpowers lesser men. Even if that day his anger is suppressed, resentment lingers in his chest until one day he acts on it. So speak, will you protect me? So this is pretty natural, of course, right? This prophet is speaking to a bunch of kings. If he says something that one of them doesn't like, who knows what's going to happen when he's, back in a back alley, as far as I have those in this camp, or sleeping in the middle of the night or whatever, or out in the open, I guess, as far as that goes. So he just asked for Achilles' protection. Um, and considering how Agamemnon had treated Chryses when he came in asking for his daughter, I don't think that's too surprising. But we start to get a picture here, right? This is a very rough and tumble situation. These guys don't have a lot of respect for old people or for tradition, apparently. So Achilles said, "Take courage, state what your powers tell you. By Apollo, whom Zeus loves, to whom you, Calchas, pray in prophecy to the Danaans, I swear this: while I live to look upon the light of day, no Achaean will raise violent hands upon you. No, not even if you name Agamemnon, who claims he's by far the best Achaean." So I like that. He just says, uh, you have my protection, basically. He then says, I don't even care if it's Agamemnon. And I don't know how much of this is just the story being a little formulaic and repeating what it knows, or kind of projecting what we as the audience suspects is going to be coming. And remember, the audience who's hearing this probably knows most of these stories already. But I don't know if it's saying this in a formulaic way, or if Achilles is really assuring him that I don't care if it's Agamemnon, I'm still going to stand by you. And I love too that he adds that little jab at the end. He claims he's by far the best Achaean. So there's going to be a lot of energy. I see it that way anyway, of Achilles challenging Agamemnon this whole time. I take it, and I think I've heard other people do the same, say the same. I take it as a little bit of a challenge to Agamemnon's authority that Achilles even called this assembly. This might have been normal, but there's a lot of energy of Achilles being the upstart young star warrior, and Agamemnon, trying to hold his own in terms of keep maintaining his authority. Encouraged, the wise prophet then declared, Apollo does not fault us for prayers or offerings, but for his priest disgraced by Agamemnon, who did not free his daughter and take ransom. I'm going to start paraphrasing just a little bit here as we go on, unless anybody really, really objects. Otherwise, this might get a little long in parts. That's why the archer god has brought disaster and still bring more. He will not remove his plague until we hand back bright-eyed Chryseis, give her to her beloved father freely without ransom, and offer holy sacrifice at Chryse. If we will carry all that out, we may change Apollo's mind, appease him. So basically, give the girl back along with some sacrifices, and maybe everything will be good. Yeah, young lady's name is Chryseis, and her dad's name is Chryse. So don't blame me. I don't make up these names. So he spoke and sat back down. Then Agamemnon stood up before them, incensed, his spirit filled with immense black rage. Eyes blazing fire, he rounded first on Calchas. Prophet of evil, when have you ever said good things to me? You love to predict the worst, always the worst. You never show good news. Now in prophecy to the Danaans, you say Archer Apollo brings us pain because I was unwilling to accept fine ransom for Chryseis' daughter Chryseis, but I have a great desire to take her home. In fact, this gets a little rough here. I want her more than Clytemnestra, the wife I married. Chryseis is just as good in her shape, physique, intelligence, or work. Still, I'm prepared to give her back if that's best. I want the people safe, not all killed off. But then you will owe me another prize. I won't be the only Argive left without a gift. That would be entirely unfair to me. You can all see my spoils are going elsewhere. Yeah, Fletcher from the Deep. Similar names was probably another memorization aid. That's probably true. There are a lot of formulas in here that are meant to help with memorization, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it. So Agamemnon predictably doesn't like what this prophet says. Basically, you only bring me bad news, and there's probably an undertone of insinuation that maybe he's not always prophesying purely accurately, or at least purely objectively, that he has it out for Agamemnon. If not that, just a certain amount of frustration here. Also pretty gross, of course, that he says that he likes this young lady more than his wife. And of course, what they do when they capture these women isn't great. At that point, swift-footed Achilles answered the king, noble son of Atreus, most acquisitive of men. How can brave Achaeans give you a prize now? There are none left for us to pass around. We've divided up what we allotted. Loot from captured towns we've devastated. For men to make a common pile again would be most unfair. Send the girl back now, as the god demands. Should Zeus ever grant we pillage Troy, a city rich in goods, we'll offer you 3 or 4 times as much. So, and I didn't bring this up before. The concern of Agamemnon is that everybody got their part of the loot, and he's not going to get his. Achilles says they can pay him back later. Mighty Agamemnon then said in reply, Achilles, you're a fine man, like a god, but don't conceal what's hidden in your heart. You'll not deceive me or win me with your words. You intend to keep your prizes for yourself while the army takes my trophy from me. That's why you tell me to give Chryseis back. Let Achaeans give me another prize, equal in value, something I'll enjoy. If not, then I'll take a prize myself by force, something from you or Ajax or Odysseus. The man I visit is going to be enraged. But let's postpone discussion of all this. Let's drag a black ship to the sacred sea, select a crew, load oxen for sacrifice, and Chryseis, that fair complexioned girl. Let's have as leader some wise counselor, Idomeneus, Ajax, godlike Odysseus, or you, Peleus' son, most eminent of all. So with an offering, we may appease the god who shoots from far away. So he agrees, Agamemnon agrees to this whole arrangement. He agrees to send her back. He doesn't want to see this continue, but he wants to get something back from someone else. It doesn't sound like he's going for Achilles' idea of paying him back later. And I think we're seeing a pattern here. He's reading bad intent into Achilles. He comes off as a little insecure, maybe even paranoid. He thinks everybody's out to get him when they suggest things. So Calchas is just always bringing bad news. Achilles just wants to keep his own stuff for himself. There's a lot of language in here I don't know totally how to read. Like he says, the man I visit is going to be enraged. Is that really how he's supposed to literally be talking, or is that just this part of the poem explaining something for the audience, or is it just something more lyrical? And he calls Achilles Peleus' son, the most eminent of all. Again, how you read this depends, or how you see what he's doing depends on how you read the text. Is this simply more just formula, more basic description of Achilles for the sake of the audience, or is he really buttering him up a little bit here? It doesn't fit the tone of how these two men are talking to each other, unless he's just trying to throw him a bone. Scowling firmly, swift-footed Achilles interposed. You insatiable creature, quite shameless. How can any Achaean obey you willingly, join a raiding party, or keep fighting with full force against an enemy? I did not come to battle over here because of Trojans. I have no fight with them. They never stole my bulls or horses or destroyed my crops in fertile Phthia, where heroes grow. Many shady mountains and the roaring sea stand there between us. But you, great shameless man, we came with you to please you, to win honor from the Trojans, for you, dog face, and for Menelaus. You don't consider this, don't think at all. You threaten now to confiscate the prize I worked so hard for, gift from Achaea's sons. When we Achaeans loot some well-built Trojan town, my prizes never match the ones you get. The major share of war's fury rests on me. When we hand around the battle spoils, you get much larger trophies. Worn out in war, I reach my ships with something fine but small. So I'll return home now to Phthia. It's far better to sail back in my curved ships. I don't fancy staying here undervalued to pile up riches, treasures just for you. Alex0597, nice to see you here. I'm getting real let me speak to your manager vibes from Agamemnon. Yeah, kind of, and also I am the manager. Yeah, these two are clearly not happy with each other. Achilles, we're starting to see a lot of pent-up frustration come out here. This is that part in the fight where you start bringing up all your old grudges. He's not just mad about this one situation where Agamemnon wants to take somebody else's prize, possibly his, but he basically is like, I have no point to be here. I'm only here to help you. On top of that, you're always taking the best stuff when I do most of the fighting. And then now, after all that, you want to take my prize still. So I think he's been nursing some grudges for a while. Basically, we're here to do all the hard work for you. Everyone here in the alliance is fighting for your sake, and you're less than appreciative. To that, Agamemnon, king of men, shot back. Fly off home then, if that's your heart's desire. I'll not beg you to stay on my account. I have others all around to honor me, especially all-wise Zeus himself. Of all the kings Zeus cherishes, it's you I hate the most. You love constant strife, war, and combat. So what if you're strong? Some god gave you that. So scurry off home. I kind of like that line because I think by that standard, whatever anybody has came from the gods. So take ships and friends. Go rule your myrmidons. I don't like you or care about your rage, but I'll make this threat. I'll take your prize, fair cheek Briseis. I'll fetch her in person. You'll see just how much I'm the better man, and others will hate to speak to me as peers, in public claiming full equality with me. Which sounds like I'm laying down the law and making an example out of you, basically. And I think that's a lot of what this whole conversation is about. I don't think these two, okay, I don't want to read too much of that into it, but I don't think these two care that much for these women. Um, Agamemnon says he's very fond of Chryseis, but I think at least publicly what this is mostly about is these two men's honor. And I think that's how most people read this. And that's a lot of what Agamemnon's doing here. He's letting a lot of his insecurity about his leadership come through. Basically, he needs to uh, he needs to show everybody else that Achilles can't do what he wants. There's also he's also showing that he has a lot of long-standing frustration with Achilles. He thinks he's just generally a troublemaker. And if you've ever led a group of people, you probably can relate to this. There's that one person who might be talented, but you wonder if you can just do the job without them and your life would just be a lot better. So Achilles is probably an ongoing headache for Agamemnon, and he almost just wonders, as good a fighter as he is, if he would just be better off with a more harmonious army and his, only his most talented fighter just gone and out of his way. As Agamemnon spoke, Peleus' son Achilles was overwhelmed with anguish, heart torn in two ways, debating in his shaggy chest what he should do. Should he draw out a sharp sword on his thigh, incite the crowd, kill Atreus' son, or suppress his rage, control his fury? As he argued in his mind and heart, he slid his huge sword partway from its sheath. At that moment, Athena came down from heaven. White-armed Hera sent her. She cherished both men, cared for them equally. Athena stood behind Achilles, grabbed him by his golden hair, invisible to all except Achilles. In astonishment, he turned. At once, he recognized Pallas Athena, the dreadful glitter in her eyes. So Athena comes down for him to basically stop him from fighting. Achilles is ready to just straight up murder Agamemnon right in front of everybody until Athena comes down. Hera dispatches her. She comes down and tries to stop him. In a lot of cases, I said that the gods tend to work subtly. In many cases, they inspire or argue with people. And like in this instance, they're invisible to everybody else. So you could obviously read this as the voice of reason within Achilles' own mind. Whether if the gods inspire somebody or urge them on into battle, that could be their own adrenaline pumping. In this case, that could be that little voice inside his own head telling him, hey, you better not do this. This isn't meant to be that ambiguous in the story. We're meant to understand the gods are there, but there is always that other layer of reading beneath it. Fletcher from the Deep says, debating in his shaggy chest sounds like something from a Robert E. Howard Conan story. Not sure exactly what that is, but that sounds interesting. It's funny too. I don't think people usually picture Achilles like being a really hairy person. He always seems a little more clean shaven by the standards of the bearded hairy Greeks. But so Athena tells him to settle down. It says Achilles spoke, his words had wings. And that's a common phrase. I haven't read a ton of translations, and I don't know how common that specific phrase is, but I think it's just a way of saying they spoke very emphatically, or their words were effective. Drew Harrison says Athena was born when she sprang fully armored and carrying a sword and shield from Zeus's forehead for some reason. Yeah, stories of the gods are pretty weird. We could probably do a whole thing about that at some point. And they vary too. We'll maybe get into that some as we get toward the end of this. Child of aegis-bearing Zeus, why have you come now? Do you wish to see how overbearing Agamemnon is? I'll tell you where this is all going to lead. I'll tell you where all this is going to lead. That arrogance will cost him his life. So Achilles is a little heated here. A goddess literally comes down and tried and grabs him and tries to stop him, and he just says, "I'm going to kill this motherfucker," basically. Glittery-eyed Athena then spoke in reply. Alex says, "Does words have wings?" Expression reference Hermes. It might very well. I don't know that specifically, but that does I could see that making sense. Athena spoke in reply, "I came down from heaven to curb your passion if you obey. White-armed Hera sent me. She loves you both alike, cares equally. Give up this quarrel. Don't draw your sword. Fight him with words so he becomes disgraced. For I say to you, this will happen because of Agamemnon's arrogance. Someday gifts 3 times greater than this girl will be set down before you. Control yourself. Obey." Swift-footed Achilles answered Athena, "Goddess of men should follow your instructions, though angry in their hearts. It's better so. The person who's obedient to the gods attend to all the more." And this, short as this line is, this sounds very much like this doesn't sound like realistic dialogue. This sounds like the poet explaining reverence to the gods to the audience through the mouth of Achilles. Obeying Athena's words, Achilles relaxed his huge fist on the silver hilt and pushed the massive sword back into its scabbard. One thing I'm always curious about, nobody saw Athena, but did nobody also see him like pull his sword halfway out? I don't know. That seems like that would have alarmed some people. Sorry to pause, is just drying my throat out quite a bit. Athena then returned to heaven, home of Zeus, who bears the Aegis and the other gods. The Aegis, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's that shield where I think it has the Gorgon's head on it, Medusa's head on it, and if you hold it out, it like causes fear in everybody. That'll be later in the story. Achilles turned on Agamemnon, Atreus' son. With harsh abuse, his anger still unabated. I like this line. "You drunken sot, dog-eyed, dear, timid coward. You're never strong enough within yourself to arm for war alongside other comrades, or to venture with Achaea's bravest on a raid. To you, that smells too much like death. No, you'd prefer to stroll around throughout the wide Achaean army to grab gifts from a man who speaks against you, a king who gorges on his own people. You lord it over worthless men. If not, son of Atreus, this would be your last offense. I'll tell you, swear a great oath to this point, by this scepter, which will never sprout leaves and shoots again, first ripped away from its mountain stump, nor bloom any more. Now that bronze has sliced off leaf and bark." He's really describing in a lot of detail the fact that this wooden scepter was chopped up and skinned and isn't going to grow like a tree anymore, I guess. "The scepter Achaean sons take in hand whenever they do justice in Zeus's name. An oath on this has power. On this I swear, the time will come when Achaea's sons will miss Achilles. A time when, in distress, you'll lack my help. A time when Hector, that man-killer, destroys many warriors. Though grief will tear your hearts apart because you shamed Achaea's finest man." So Athena says, basically, use your words. You can do more harm to this person by shaming him in front of everybody instead of actually trying to attack him, because that'd just be a disaster. And he says, basically, "I'll leave and you'll be sorry." Hector, y'all probably know this. He's Paris's brother, and he's the greatest warrior among all the Trojans. So he's kind of the Achilles of the Trojan side. So when I leave, Hector's going to rip you all apart. So the son of Peleus spoke, throwing to the ground the scepter with the golden studs. Then he sat down, directly facing furious Agamemnon. So sounds almost like he did a little mic drop there after he was done, a literal one. Then Nestor stood up, clear, sweet orator from Pylos. Sweeter than honey, the words flowed from his tongue. In his own lifetime, 2 generations of mortal men had come and passed away, all those born and raised with him so long ago in sacred Pylos. Now he ruled a 3rd generation of his people. So Nestor, if you don't know, he's the oldest of all the Achaean leaders. He's and his job basically is, for the most part, to come give wise advice to people. He and Odysseus, of course, being the hero of the Odyssey, he and Odysseus are almost used interchangeably, it seems sometimes. They both come to try to talk sense into people, often with long speeches. Nestor's speeches are especially long. This one isn't that long. If you see here on the screen, it goes like this. Some of his, I think, are multiple pages. Some people take that as like making fun of him because he's long-winded. I don't think that's the case. These stories, the Iliad specifically, and I think most of these epics are supposed to be repositories of knowledge as much as a single story. So they have a lot of sub-stories about different people, sometimes told through the mouths of other characters. So where a Greek couldn't go to the library or use the internet or anything like that, hearing these stories from a bard would kind of be their way of passing on information. Maybe think of that Ray Bradbury story, sorry, where they burned all the books. This is really embarrassing about I'm spacing out. Fahrenheit 451, where people started memorizing books because you couldn't keep them. Think of it as that, where the bard who would tell the story is basically passing along all this cultural lore to people who listen to it, and it's encapsulated in this story. But Nestor does give long speeches. This one I probably won't read the whole thing, but he says, "Alas, this is great sorrow for Achaeans. Priam and Priam's children will be glad. The hearts of other Trojans will swell with joy should they find out about such quarreling." So essentially, let's skip over some of it, but basically, boy, wouldn't the enemy be happy to see you two jerks fighting like this. But listen, you're both younger men than I, and I've been colleague of better men than both of you. Men who never showed me any disrespect. Men whose like I've not seen again and never will. So he lists off some men. These probably would be understood by the people listening to the poem. To us, most of them don't mean anything. You probably recognize Theseus. I don't know about most of the rest of them. All the enemies they fought were strong. He talks about how they battled some mountain centaurs and they totally killed them because they were so strong. So basically, and Nestor does this a lot. Back in the day, I was strong. We were all better than you guys. So listen up, young man. Yeah, and he says that, even as great as they were, they listened to my advice, so you should do the same too. And then he says, Agamemnon, you're an excellent man, but do not take Briseis from Achilles. Let that pass. Achaeus' sons gave her to him first. And you, Peleus' son, don't seek to fight the king, not as your enemy. The scepter-bearing king, whose powerful authority comes from Zeus, never shares honors equally. Achilles, you may be stronger since your mother was divine, but he's more powerful, for he rules more men. But you, son of Atreus, check your anger. Set aside, I urge you, your rage against Achilles, who provides in the middle of war's evils a powerful defense for all Achaeans. So essentially, both of you chill out. Agamemnon, you need him because he's your best warrior. Achilles, he's in charge. Just listen up. But he tells Agamemnon, don't take his wealth. Just be happy with something else later. Mighty Agamemnon then replied to Nestor, Old man, everything you say is true enough. But this man wants to put the rest to shame, rule all of us, lord it over everyone. But some, I think, will not obey him. So what if the gods who live forever made him a spearman? Is that some reason we should let him say such shameful things? And Agamemnon, again, still sounds like this kind of weak leader who's trying way too hard. It's like when if you've ever been a teacher and you're new and you let the class get out of control and you really try to put the hammer down on this one kid you think's a troublemaker. That's how Agamemnon comes off to me. Maybe that's my residual feelings when I was first teaching this and I was in that position as a new teacher. But basically, I can't let him get away with all this stuff. And yeah, he has a lot of long-standing frustration with Achilles. Achilles, interrupting Agamemnon, shouted, I'll be called a coward, a nobody, if I held back from any action because of something you might say. Order other men about. Don't tell me what I should do. I'll not obey you anymore. But I will tell you this, remember it well. I'll not raise my hand to fight about that girl. No, not against you or any other man. You Achaeans gave her to me, and now you seize her back again. But you'll not take another thing from my swift black ship. You'll get nothing else with my consent. If you'd like to see what happens, just try. My spear will quickly drip with your dark blood. Thus the pair of them continued arguing. Then they stood up, dissolving the assembly by the ships. Peleus' son went back to his well-balanced ships and huts, along with Patroclus, Menoetius' son, and friends. So what I see here is Achilles says he's going to play along, but obviously you come try anything else and see what happens. I'll kill you. And I take that obviously as trying to maintain his dignity or his sense of honor. And I think that's really what both these guys are fighting about. Yes, they're fighting over the women literally, but this is really a fight over your sense of honor. And in this kind of culture, you simply can't you can't you can't take an insult from somebody. You can't let an insult stand, and you can't let your honor be compromised in front of everybody. As a warrior, your honor is everything. Saving face is super important. Your honor is your entire identity publicly, but also I think it's your entire sense of your entire sense of self, basically, of self actualization. And if you give that up, you're essentially nothing. So neither of these guys can stand down once this argument has started. So I take this whole thing as being this kind of contrived situation where honor was passed out equally to everybody in order to, when they gave out their trophies or prizes or whatever. And when this plague happened and Agamemnon had to give up Chryseis, that kind of set everything off. It disrupted the equilibrium. Now somebody had to be dishonored. There was no way to give everything to everybody without distributing it. And they said that's not practical. So one of these men is going to have to lose face in this situation. And that's just unthinkable. So Achilles, yes, he gives up, but he tries to, I think, maintain as much dignity as he can by just saying, I'll do this I'll do this to cooperate, but he has to make sure that I can only be pushed so far. By the way, there are a couple things about this. Number one, what these characters do obviously is horrific. These guys are all war criminals, even though they're more or less the protagonists of the story, and that's just a product of the time. It's also a little bit telling that capturing and enslaving women was not considered problematic in this story. Where the offense occurred was when a priest came with the emblems of a god, and he got sent away, in shame when they wouldn't listen to him. So actually capturing women, forcing them come back to you, you all know what happens in that whole situation. That's fine, but dishonor a priest of Apollo, that's where we draw the line, and now we have problems. So a totally different set of values, obviously. This whole part here, Agamemnon's he's getting people ready to go sail off and bring Chryseis back to her father. We won't read all that. He sends people to Achilles' tents. Achilles is sitting around by his ships where he went back after the meeting. Agamemnon's people come, and he can tell what they're there for. He basically says, cheer up. I have no problem with you. You're just the messengers. I'm not going to bother you about all this. Go ahead and take her away. This is Agamemnon's problem. He sends his friend Patroclus to go get her. He sends her, and they go off. So Achilles kind of tries to keep up a brave face, I think, as well as reassuring these guys. But then as soon as they're all out of sight, he walks down to the shore and breaks down crying. It says Achilles, then in tears, withdrew from his companions, sat by the shore, stared at the wide gray seas. Stretching out his hands, he cried aloud, praying repeatedly to Thetis, his beloved mother. Alex says, I think you're right that honor is the main conflict here. It's not that Agamemnon is losing a girl. It's that he's losing property. Yeah, these women are property. And he talks about how much he enjoys having her in bed, which gross, especially considering she's a prisoner, but also her ability to produce things at the loom and stuff like that. So yeah, capturing women is just like capturing cattle or I don't know, gold or whatever. But Achilles cries out to his mother by the sea, Mother, since you gave me life, if only for a while, Olympian Zeus, high thunderer, should give me due honor. But he does not grant me even slight respect. For wide-ruling Agamemnon, Atreus' son, has shamed me, taken away my prize, appropriated it for his own use. Drew Harrison, the past was the worst. I would agree. Future's looking something too, right? As he said this, he wept. His mother heard him from deep within the sea where she sat by her old father. Quickly she rose up, moving above gray waters like an ocean mist, and settled down before him as he wept. So she basically rises up out of the water and floats to him. This would sounds pretty cool. I don't know how they would represent this in a movie without it looking really corny, though. She stroked him, then said, "My child, why these tears? What sorrows weigh down your heart? Tell me so we'll both know. Don't hide from me what's on your mind." With a deep groan, swift-footed Achilles then replied, "You know, why should I tell you what you know?" And I think maybe she's supposed to know because she's a goddess or whatever. I don't know how much the gods are all expected to know. I don't even know if that's consistent within the story. But this feels a little bit like a wink at the audience, maybe, because he says, why should I tell you what you know? And then he repeats to the audience all of this stuff, which is basically just repeating beat for beat what we've already heard twice. We heard part of it. It tells us a story about how Chryse came and got chased off by Agamemnon. It gets retold when they're by Calchas when he's giving him his prophecy, and they're arguing over that. And now he's explaining again to his mother the whole thing in even more detail. So we're going to skip all that naturally. Again, this is just repetition due to the fact that this is an epic poem that I believe was meant to be performed in the form of song, and repetition was helpful for the performer and the audience. So he tells her, if you can protect your son, go to Mount Olympus and implore Zeus if ever in word or deed you have pleased him. For often I've heard you boast in his house, blah, blah, blah. Basically, he'll listen because she helped save him from the other Olympians when they all conspired against him. She brought up Briareos, a giant creature with 100 hands, to come help. And he tells a story about how basically she saved Zeus. So go sit down by Zeus, clasp his knee, remind him of all that, so he'll want to help the Trojans somehow. Corner Achaeans by the sea, by their ships' prows, have them destroyed so they all enjoy their king. So the son of Atreus, wide-ruling Agamemnon himself, may see his foolishness, dishonoring Achilles, the best of the Achaeans. So Achilles, it's not enough that he leaves the war and says, good luck to the rest of you. He actually wants Zeus to come in and undermine them so that they'll really feel sorry for what Agamemnon did. I guess mostly that he will. Thetis, shedding tears, answered her son Achilles, "O my child, why did I nurture you, since I brought you up to so much pain? Would you were safely by your ships, dry-eyed. Your life is fated to be short. You'll not live long. Now faced with a quick doom, you're in distress, more so than any other man. At home, I gave you life marked by an evil fate, but I'll tell these things to thunder-loving Zeus. I'll go myself to snow-topped Mount Olympus to see if he will undertake all this. Meanwhile, you should sit by your swift ships, angry at Achaeans. Take no part in war. For yesterday Zeus went to Oceanus to banquet with the worthy Ethiopians. The gods all journeyed with him. In 12 days, when he returns and comes home to Olympus, I'll go to Zeus's bronze-floored house, clasp his knee. I think I'll get him to consent." So Thetis, I think one of her main jobs here is to talk about how sad she is over Achilles and his fate. She's always known that he's fated to die in battle. I don't think you can change what's fated to happen, but I think there's also a little tension where she wishes Achilles would stay out of battle. And so that's kind of part of her thing, is to come complain about that and cry over it. She says, so go talk to Zeus, but he's away for 12 days along with the rest of the Olympians. A little bit interesting that they're totally out of touch because they're off in a faraway land, yet Hera still saw the fight between Achilles and Agamemnon and sent Athena down to do something about it, but is what it is. Thetis spoke, then she went away, leaving Achilles there, angry at heart for lovely girdled Briseis, taken from him by force against his will. And notice there's never any mention of what the women want. It's just, men were upset about it. I think the reason that strikes me there is because I think I used to hear it taken by force against her will when I read this at some point, and that's not what it's saying, obviously. Odysseus sailed to Chryse. Okay, this is a whole long thing. all of this is just Odysseus leading some ships over to Chryse to bring Chryseus back. There's a whole long drawn out thing where they give speeches, they do sacrifices. It shows them playing music and all this stuff. And so then, hearing them, Apollo felt joy in his heart. So he is happy about all that. At sunset, he gave them, I think he gave them favorable winds and stopped doing the plague and all that. So at this point, everything's more or less fixed, at least in those terms. The plague is gone. The army's okay, except for the fact that it's broken up and Achilles isn't with them anymore. Meanwhile, Achilles, divinely born son of Peleus, was sitting in anger along with his ships. So basically, he's just sitting there sulking. He didn't attend an assembly or go out to fight or anything else, but he pined away at heart, remaining idle by his ships, yearning for the hue and cry and clash of battle. So he doesn't really like relaxing, Achilles. He actually enjoys getting out and fighting. I guess it's like keeping the star basketball player off the court, except with much more death and destruction. 12 days later, the company of gods came back together to Olympus with Zeus in the lead. Poor work-life balance. Yeah, Alex. I'm probably a little bit that same way. I don't like to just sit back and relax, which is why I'm sitting here streaming and make videos and stuff like that. I just like being occupied. Thetis did not forget the promise to her son. She rose up through the ocean waves at daybreak, then moved high up to great Olympus. She found Zeus, wide-seeing son of Cronos, some distance from the rest. This is all just ritual speak, but Cronos, most of you probably know, was the king of the Titans and the father of the Olympian gods. Seated on the highest peak of many-ridged Olympus, she sat down right in front of him. With her left hand, she clutched his knees. With her right, she cupped his chin in supplication to Lord Zeus, son of Cronos. I always thought that's kind of a weird-sounding posture, but basically she just threw herself before him and begged. Father Zeus, if among the deathless gods have ever served you well in word or deed, then grant my prayer be fulfilled. Bring honor to my son, who of all men will be the fate's quickest victim. For just now, Agamemnon, king of men, has shamed him. He seized his prize, robbing him in person, and kept it for himself. But honor him, Zeus, all-wise Olympian. Give the Trojans the upper hand until the Achaeans respect my son and until they multiply his honors. Paupuck, Lesser Gatsby, that's an interesting name, ate his son. Yeah, I won't read that whole thing just in case YouTube doesn't like that. But yeah, Kronos did some weird stuff. All of those guys did some weird stuff. I like your name too, by the way. It sounds like Lesser Gatsby. Sounds like a reference to Great Ajax versus Lesser Ajax. I don't know if that's what you're going for. Sorry, I'm finding where I'm at. Oh, Thetis finished. Cloud Gatherer Zeus did not respond. He sat a long time silent. Thetis held his knees, clinging close, repeating her request once more. Promise me truly, nod your head or deny me, since there's nothing here for you to fear. So I'll clearly see how among the gods I enjoy the least respect of all. Anonymous insignificant person. So is clutching his knees a euphemism for clutching his reproductive organs? I really don't know. I never have taken that this way. Who knows? I don't think that's probably in the spirit of what's happening here, especially considering what's going to happen next. I don't think she's here to stir that kind of trouble. But who knows? The gods were all kind of freaks in these stories. Promise me nod your head or deny me, since there's nothing here for you to... Oh, I already said that already. So basically, just give me an answer. Zeus is just sitting there seeming a little awkward or nervous, and she says, just tell me something, dude. Cloud Gatherer Zeus, greatly troubled, said, a nasty business. What you say will set Hera against me. She provokes me with so much of her abuse. Sorry, she provokes me so with her abuse. Even now, in the assembly of immortal gods, she's always insulting me, accusing me of favoring the Trojans in the war. But go away for now in case Hera catches on. I'll take care of this, make sure it comes to pass. Come to convince you, I'll nod my head. Among gods, that's the strongest pledge I make. Once I nod my assent, nothing I say can be revoked, denied, or unfulfilled. So I guess that's his way of, I don't know, making a vow is nodding his head. Zeus nodded his dark brows. The divine hair of the king the king of gods fell forward, down over his immortal head, shaking Olympus to its very base. The conference over, the two parted. Thetis plunged from bright Olympus back into the sea. Kind of an interesting image. It looks like she dove all the way from Olympus back down into the ocean. And I believe that takes a full day to fall from Olympus down to the earth. So that'd be quite a long dive. Not meant to, don't know if all this is meant to be that literal. Zeus went inside his house. Their father present, all the gods at once stood up from their seats. No one dared stay put as he came in. All rose together. Zeus seated himself upon his throne. Looking at him, Hera sensed he had made some deal with Thetis, silver-footed daughter of the old man of the sea. At once she spoke up accusingly. Which god has been scheming with you, crafty one? You always love to work on things in secret without involving me. You never want to tell me openly what you intend. Alex said, now that's an Olympic high dive. Yeah. Yeah, that would be quite a dive. Be a little wild if she missed, right? The father of gods and men replied, Herod, don't hope to understand my every plan. Even for my own wife, that's dangerous. What's appropriate for you to hear about, no one, god or man, will know before you. But when I wish to hide my thoughts from gods, don't go digging after them or pestering me for every detail. So, sounds a little ominous when he tells his wife it's dangerous to push me too far, and it'll get a little more explicit here. Ox-eyed Queen Hera then replied to Zeus. That's one of her titles. I don't know why they call that. I don't know if that means you have like big eyes and it's supposed to be pretty, but it always sounded a little weird. Most dread son of Cronus, what are you saying? I have not been overzealous before now in questioning you or seeking answers. Surely you're quite at liberty to plan anything you wish. But now in my mind, I've got this dreadful fear that Thetis, silver-footed daughter of the old man of the sea, has won you over. For this morning early, she sat down beside you, held your knees. I think you surely nodded your agreement to honor Achilles, killing many soldiers, slaughtering them by the Achaean ships. So it sounds like she saw them. It also sounds like she's just expressing a little bit of suspicion. And the way she says this sounds a little uncanny, like she knows a little too much detail. Again, I don't know how much of this she saw and how much of this she's speaking just purely out of paranoia or suspicion. And she's repeating detail for the sake of the audience. Drew Harrison said, everyone is such snowflakes. Every perceived slight is provocation beyond tolerance. Yeah, the Iliad, people don't speak subtly in the Iliad. Everything is the most, I guess, the way they express it. Nobody feels a little bit a certain way. Nobody or their child has been slightly abused. Everything's in extremes. I've heard it said of the Iliad that everything is in the foreground. So every bit of action is emphasized fully. Nothing's like prioritized. If a minor character comes in and says something, it's not kind of given side treatment. That person comes in and holds the stage as if they're a main character and gives their whole speech and then leaves. So it's a little off-putting. Same thing in, I think the same thing in how they express themselves. There's no set of prioritization or emphasis. Everything's just blown up to 110%. Zeus spoke out in response. My dear lady, you're always fancying things. Your attention picks up every detail, but you can't do anything about it except push yourself still further from my heart. That's a little harsh. Making matters so much worse for you. If things are as they are, then that's the way I want them. So sit down quietly, do as I say. If not, all the gods here in Olympus won't be any help when I reach up to set my hands on you, for they're invincible. So literally, shut up, woman, or I'll put hands on you and nobody can stop me. It's pretty ugly. Zeus finished speaking. Ox-eyed Queen Hera was afraid, so she sat down, slightly suppressing what her heart desired. Silently, sorry. In Zeus's home, the Olympian gods began to quarrel. Then that famous artisan, Hephaestus, concerned about his mother, white-armed Hera, spoke to them. Hephaestus is the god of the forge. Basically, he's the blacksmith god. I always liked Hephaestus. He tends to stay on the outside of all the drama. He's not deeply involved, and here he's coming in to be a peacemaker. I think he's also considered the only ugly god, and he's kind of pathetic. They married him to Aphrodite, because she's the most beautiful god of love, and they didn't want to have a lot of fighting, so they gave him to her, and she was always running around cheating, and he became a big joke on Olympus. So I always felt bad for him, and I kind of liked him, but here he's stepping up, kind of gently trying to be the reasonable one. Donna Mifflin said, "Will Zeus ignore me because I'm not Greek?" I don't know. Not sure exactly what you mean by that, but yeah, Hephaestus is the butt of a lot of cuckold jokes. That's exactly what he is. But then at one point, I think he found Ares and Aphrodite in bed together, and he sprung a trap that trapped him there, and everybody pointed and laughed, even though I don't know how that would be more upsetting or problematic to them than to him, but whatever. Hephaestus says, "A troublesome matter this will prove, unendurable if you two start fighting over mortal men like this, inciting gods to quarrel. If we start bickering, we can't enjoy the meal, our excellent banquet. So I'm urging Mother, though she's more willing to humor. Oh, sorry. So I'm urging Mother, though she's more willing to humor Zeus, our dear father, so he won't get angry once again, disturb the feast for us. So if Zeus, the Lord of Lightning, was of a mind to hurl us from our seats, his strength's too great. But if you talk to him with soothing words, at once Olympian Zeus will treat us well." Hephaestus spoke, then stood up, passed a double goblet across to his dear mother, saying to her, "Stay calm, mother, even though you are upset. If not, then, as beloved as you are, I may see you beaten up before my eyes, with me incapable of helping out, though the sight would make me most unhappy. It's hard to take a stand against Zeus. Once when I was eager to assist you, Zeus seized me from my feet and threw me out, down from heaven's heights. The entire day I fell, and then, right at sunset, dropped on Lemnos, almost dead. After that fall, men of Sintes helped me recover." So this is a just horrifying scene. Uh, Zeus rises up and threatens to attack his wife Hera, and then her son Hephaestus. He basically meekly limps up and says, "Hey, don't make any trouble. You don't want to get Dad upset. You know what he's capable of." So she calms down. So this is just a really horrifying scene of domestic violence, is what it amounts to, and obviously the Greeks didn't see it the same way we did. Hephaestus is, by the way, he's Hera's son, but stories vary whether he's the son of Hera and Zeus, or just the son of Hera. I think he's, in some traditions, considered both of their child. In another, Hera gave birth to him by herself just to get back at Zeus when, as someone said earlier in the chat, he gave birth to Athena all by himself when she sprung out of his head. So I don't know, weird stories. People had strange imaginations. Also, there's different stories about how Hephaestus is, he has a limp. I think he's a little crippled, at least in one leg. I'm not sure exactly the nature of his injury. But in this story, Zeus threw him off Olympus, and I don't know if that's meant to be where his limp came from. Or in other stories, his mother, again, I feel really bad for this poor guy. His mother threw him off Olympus immediately after he was born because he was so ugly. And it's not totally, again, there's different stories about whether Hera or Zeus threw him from Olympus. And then there's with the stories of Hera throwing him from Olympus. In one version of the story, it's because he's ugly and he was crippled after she threw him down. In the other one, he was already crippled, and that was part of the reason she didn't like his looks and threw him down. Drew Harrison, from the stories I've seen, the only time Zeus is afraid of Hera is when he's cheated on her. Yeah, that's hard for me to read. That's definitely the time that he's most sheepish, but he has this there's this weird dynamic where he's tiptoeing around the Olympians, including Hera, probably especially Hera. Like in this story, he's nervous that she'll catch him collaborating with Thetis. Again, depending on how I guess you read that, that could be taken a little bit sexually, or at least uh, she might assume every time that he's around another woman that it's an affair of some kind or another. But he's afraid that she'll catch him uh, collaborating with her, and he just doesn't want trouble. He's always afraid of trouble from the other Olympians. He just doesn't want things to be disrupted. He's trying to keep it smoothed over. But you push him too far, and all of a sudden he'll rise up and turn to violence. And as this story said a few times, he can take on all the rest of the Olympians by himself. Um, so after he spoke, white-armed goddess Hera smiled. She reached for her son's goblet. He poured the drink, going from right to left for all the other gods, drawing off sweet nectar from the mixing bowl. Then their laughter broke out irrepressibly as the sacred gods saw Hephaestus bustling around, concerned about the feast. So he makes peace, but still they're laughing at the poor guy. All right. Oh, that guy tries so hard to keep the peace around here. Look at him limping around trying to serve drinks. Uh, all that day they dined until sunset. No one's heart was unsatisfied. All feasted equally. Um, and I don't know how explicit that's meant to be by contrast, but it seems like when everybody gets their part equally, then there's social cohesion. And so what disrupted things on Earth was when that equality of wealth got uh, disrupted. Here, everybody's happy because everyone's getting their equal part. I'm not sure whether that's intentional or if that's just me reading too much into one little line. They heard exquisite music from Apollo's lyre and the muses' beautiful song and countersong. When the sun's bright light had set, all the gods went to their own homes. Hephaestus, the famous lame god with his resourceful skill, had made each god a place to live. Olympian Zeus, god of lightning, went home to his own bed, where he usually reclined whenever sweet sleep came over him. He went inside and lay down there with Hera of the golden throne stretched out beside him. And so that's the end of book one. I think that's meant to show, of course, that harmony's been restored. There's something deeply disturbing, of course, about that whole scene and about Hephaestus basically saying, hey, don't make dad mad. And the fact that their conflict gets resolved at the threat of force, and then they end up in bed together at the end. I don't know that this is meant to be in bed that way. Those two are never meant or shown being very affectionate toward each other, but I think it's meant to show that peace has been restored. This, I think, is by contrast to what happened down on Earth. There's two parallel conflicts here. On Olympus, or sorry, down on Earth, you have a disruption that came from two characters who came into conflict that was set off by somebody appealing to the gods over a wrong that had been done. So Calchas appeals to the god. That sets off a fight between Agamemnon and Achilles. Nestor steps in and says, hey guys, why don't you chill out? They kind of do the bare minimum to, make peace, but they're both very angry and there becomes a rift. They act out of anger, essentially. Nobody really listens to Nestor. Nobody listens to Nestor, at least in the spirit of what he says, even though Achilles doesn't try to keep Briseis and so on. But in short, the people don't listen and there's chaos. By contrast, there's a very similar situation on Olympus. Somebody appeals to a god on behalf of their child, just like Calchas appealed to Apollo on behalf of his daughter, Chryse. Sorry, did I say Chryse appealed to Apollo on behalf of his daughter Chryseis. Now later we have Theseus appealing to Zeus on behalf of her son Achilles. That sets off a fight between Zeus and Hera, and then somebody tries to intervene, and in this case Hephaestus, and now they listen a little bit better. That listening just amounts to everybody being cowed by the threat of violence from Zeus, but still it is what it is. Alex says everyone shares equally message does kind of conflict with the rest of the scene where Zeus lays down the law and brags about how powerful he is. Yeah, they certainly don't share equally in terms of authority or power or anything like that. as just a feast. And again, that could just be a little bit of ritual script. I don't know if it means anything, but equality of honor and equality of sharing wealth, that's really what kept that seems to have been what kept the fabric of the Achaean army together. And when that was disrupted, that's what seems to have torn everything apart. So yeah, we have two conflicts, one on earth and one in heaven, that were both very similar up until the point where the gods listened to advice and made harmony better than the people did. And that seems to be an obvious, the gods do the right thing. They're the exemplar of good behavior, and humans mess things up. And here's what happens. Everything gets thrown into chaos. Also, this is a very standard thing throughout the Iliad. Stories on Earth, or conflicts on Earth, expand into conflicts up on Olympus. And you'll see that very often. Spencer says, does it hold up since my first reading some 20 years ago, coming in a bit late to catch your initial reflections? I don't know. I don't know much about your first reading, I guess. I was probably first reading this. Oh, wow. It was way more than 20 years ago. Never mind. I probably first read this 30 years ago. That's way too long ago. Now I feel old. But yeah, this is, I really enjoy this. I've always enjoyed the Iliad. I taught it a lot to high schoolers, and I always really enjoyed it. They took to it more than I thought they would. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it even more this time. I do, teaching to high schoolers, I enjoyed that class, but it's always more fun to just share it out of my own sense of interest and at the pace I need to. And it's a little different when you're just talking to a camera and seeing a chat. So I'm just kind of speaking in an empty room, but it is what it is. And my throat's killing me, by the way. So sorry if it starts to give out a little bit. I need to keep drinking water. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about book one, unless anybody has any questions. I think I'm about ready to wrap up. It sets off the conflict. This is a lot denser in terms of interesting stuff happening in action than a lot of the other upcoming books. Book two is basically just listing all the people, or they count all the people and stuff like that. So a lot of the chapters moving forward are just going to be more ritual. So if people really like this, I'll see if I do more. I definitely don't think I'm going to be reading my way through the entire Iliad. I'm going to do a more produced or refined recorded version of the whole thing on my main channel, but that's a little different than reading the whole thing. So the first one will be book one, coming out in a couple of weeks. From there, I'll probably consolidate a lot of books. I'm not going to do an entire thing about book two or the books in the middle where it's just battles back and forth, people pushing across the battlefield. So I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments if you liked this. It's a little different for me, but it's fun. I don't suspect most people are going to like this as much as they like talking about something, modern and controversial, like say the Star Wars prequels or whatever. But it's kind of cool, and it's what I like doing. So, hey. Alex says it definitely helps to have someone summarize the passage. It's pretty easy for me to understand exactly what's going on. Well, I appreciate that. Cool. Thanks for the feedback. Spencer says, I love this stuff, man. I got a degree in classics. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I enjoy these stories. There's a lot of good stuff there. Sorry, my voice is just, this has been a long hour and a half haul for me, so I probably got to cut off here pretty soon. But thanks for joining me. If anybody has anything else, let me know here real quick. Otherwise, I'm going to let you guys go because I need to go let my voice rest and let my old body rest, I guess, too. So also let me know in comments if you have thoughts about what you'd like to see me do next time. I'm probably not going to do another Iliad next time, but I'm going to try to stream maybe roughly every week and a half or so. I'm sorry, every 2 weeks or so. So I'm going to tend to do this on Wednesdays. So I'm probably going to do a short recorded video every other week and then a stream every other week. So, well, thank you, everybody, and have a really good night. I'll talk to y'all later.